welcome back to Medicine for These Times. If you're enjoying this podcast, please leave a review. It means so much to me. Thank you. Today, I am here to talk about psychedelic sovereignty. I don't really even know why this has been coming through me, but it's been coming through for, I think, over a year now. And I just wanted to bring it up because I think there's a lot happening right now in the psychedelic space that needs to be addressed. And I'm here to come from a point of view that is rooted in my Buddhist background of finding compassion and neutrality and balance in most things. Of course, I'm human and I get triggered like everybody else. But what I'm finding as the psychedelic space is becoming even more of a Wild West every single day, and all of us have seen everything, right? I'm sure everybody knows there have been multiple people called out and canceled and accused of things, and not just in the last, month or two, but like since day one. By the way, this has been going on forever. It's just now we have social media and the internet and influencers and algorithms. And by the way, algorithms love to reward kind of negative content. And here's the thing. I do believe that people need to be held accountable. So I'm going to start by saying that. If there is danger or transgressions or any kind of harm being done in not just the medicine space, but the coaching and healing space, therapeutic space. I know plenty of therapists who've had many transgressions and caused harm in their practice. And let's take this into other places: doctors, dentists, surgeons. Surgeon botched my own mom's back surgery. I could go on and on. So this happens in all industries. Let's just first name that truth. I personally had an attorney that I hired to do something about 6 months ago who actually wasn't qualified to do it, and she kind of screwed it up, and I was out $900. It wasn't my own money, but it was really upsetting that even an attorney who is, who passed the bar and is part of a bar association literally caused harm, right? So this happens all over, and let's just name that it's not unique to the psychedelic space. There is a truth that psychedelics tend to be kind of hard to navigate. It's a sensitive space. It heightens all of our sensory, experiences, and it also heightens our triggers, our traumas. It brings everything to the surface for both the facilitators and providers and coaches and healers, as well as the people who are, paying or maybe even not paying to be in those spaces. So everybody is having everything come to surface. And what I've been seeing out there is there's a lot of whistleblowers, and I think it's great. I think the world actually needs a lot more whistleblowers in general. I mean, what if we blew whistles on Monsanto more often? Right? Like, where are the whistleblowers out there in some of these big industries that affect millions and millions of people? But, it's the psychedelic space. It is unfortunate. It's become the Wild West. There's a dime a dozen people doing God knows what out there. And there's definitely some harm being done. The one thing I do want to say, and I'm actually trying to get an interview with one of these people who've really been great at naming and holding people accountable. I hope she comes on because I would love to play some devil's advocate. While I always do believe, the whistle is not being blown for no reason, I'm sure most of it, or if not all of it, is true, especially when the person being accused of harm is not actually taking responsibility or making a public statement. Then you've got to really believe it, right? And we've seen that a lot in the psychedelic space. It's unfortunate. It's been pretty upsetting. There was someone very well known I interviewed a few years ago and was about to release her interview. And then all of a sudden, huge news came to surface about major harm that was being done. And God, it was What upset me more than anything, other than the harm being done, was that that person never made a statement to at least own what went wrong and to at least have a lot of us be able to learn from it. Of course, we learn from every one of these transgressions and harmful situations. I think, at least I would like to think people are learning. But if there's no opportunity to have open discussion and healing and understanding as to what went wrong and what could have gone better, and where maybe it wasn't just a person who is blatantly trying to cause harm, I actually believe, probably like most of you, that many of these people aren't actually even aware, right? They're not trying to cause harm. They just do, for various reasons. Usually it's rooted in their own trauma patterns, right? So, psychedelic sovereignty has come up a lot as we've entered into this wild west of the psychedelic space. And I thankfully have some clients that are on this path to helping people with work like this to really learn how to hold yourself in a very centered place whereby, if and when you are in a situation where maybe you're in the middle, this has happened to me a few times. You're in the middle of a ceremony. Maybe you can't really just run out, or you can, which I've had to do, but you really learn how to hold your own sovereign power to know that no one can touch you and to know your truth and your limits and your own boundaries and be able to hold yourself. And by the way, this is not to blame the victims at all. This is about entering into these psychedelic spaces to know that every facilitator, therapist, shaman, I don't care who they are and how long they've been doing it. They could have been, one of the best people who've been out there living in indigenous community for 40 years and pouring ayahuasca. They're not there to heal you. That's not their job. They are channels, right? No therapist is out to be your savior. So I've been really praying that more and more people start talking about this, to know that when you enter into a space with anybody, that yes, you're trusting them and it is their job to hold themselves with high integrity and to understand that, their limits and where their ego gets in the way and where they might be causing harm. And unfortunately, some people have not done their work. And, to me, if you're in this role as a facilitator or a healer or a coach or a therapist or anybody, whether it's in the medicine space or not, it is your job to constantly be doing your own work and have your own support, whether it's a therapist or a supervisor or both, to hold you accountable so that you don't cause harm, so that you can constantly be in check and to know, like, oh, this is my own projection. Like, here I am recording a podcast and, constantly doing this dance between trying to share my voice while also being aware of my own projections and my own trauma patterns and my own personal experiences with harm and transgressions in both the medicine space and non-medicine spaces, but also to keep a neutral place of doing that dance of, like, to know that, who are we to say what's right or wrong? And one of the best ways to navigate all of this is if each and every person really came into their own center. And this is, I think, why the terminology psychedelic sovereignty has been coming through me. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it quite means, but it's something I've been wanting to talk about and something I've personally been exploring. As I deepen into work myself with, masters who I've been sitting with for, 10 years, who've been serving medicines for, anywhere from 10 years to 30, 40 years, to realize that I'm not here to put this person on a pedestal. I don't care what I've seen them do. I don't care what magic I've experienced working with them. They are not my healers. And I am, they're just people I'm in a shared space with. And they're there working with the plants. They're there listening. They're there being a channel, but they're not there to heal me. And thankfully, I am so blessed and honored to work with masters who have said this for the 10 years or more, that I've been working with these medicines. They even say, like, I don't even want to be called your teacher. The plants are your teacher. I don't want to be called a master. The plants are the masters, the spirits that you're working with. So this is something that's been really interesting for me, especially as I'm also being shown, like a lot of us, multiple harm and transgressions being done out there in the psychedelic space. And by the way, there's a lot of harm that's being done that's not even being reported because, and I know this because I have heard many firsthand accounts of harm being done where the person doing the harm is not anywhere to be found on the internet. So I've had names be named to me that I don't even know who they are and I don't even know where to find them. They are completely so far underground that we can't cancel them. We can't call them out. All we can do is start to share stories. By the way, there are some organizations out there where you can start to report your stories anonymously and at least be able to share and tell it so we can bring more awareness into harm that's being done. But at the same time, I also want to just really start to talk about the power differentials in the spaces and to realize that if each and every one of us does our own inner work to stop putting people on pedestals and to really like work with a healer or a coach or a therapist, in a relationship and not as someone who's out to tell you how to live or what to do, which I think very often, and this is where the facilitators really need to keep their own egos in check. What happens is they're in these positions of power where people come to them and say how great they are and like, oh my God, your ceremony was so amazing. That was so beautiful. I feel healed. Well, yeah, you can thank them and say that was amazing, but, really thank yourself more than anything because you are the one showing up to do your own work. And when it comes down to it, it's your path, it's your job to go in and do your work and then work with a coach and then work with a healer and then work with a somatic therapist or whoever in a relationship. And this is one thing I really love about coaching is it tends to be a more relational experience versus some of these other roles where there's kind of this deeper power differential. And a really good coach or therapist when you can sense that their own ego is in check. And also to realize that every therapist, facilitator, coach, guide, healer on the planet has an ego. We're all humans. All of us are humans. Everybody has trauma, you know, especially, by the way, people in these spaces, we've all come to this work because of our own history and our own healing path. So, this is something as more and more call outs are going to start happening in the space. It's not about, pitting, like saying it's, the victim needs to be more sovereign and be, have firmer boundaries. It's not at all that. And it's not at all like, oh, blame the facilitator because they did one thing wrong. It's like, how do we navigate this together? And I really believe that one of the paths to navigating this wild west of a world that we live in is going to be coming deeper into yourself, your own pillar of light, your own field that is holding you, and knowing yourself and knowing your own boundaries and knowing what your yes is and knowing what your no is and practicing that and stop giving your power away to others. And if you're a facilitator or a guide or an aspiring facilitator or guide or therapist, especially in the psychedelic space, it's the one thing I'll say is if you don't have your own support or supervision or people that you're constantly learning from and holding you accountable and keeping you in check and, like really humbling you, then please stop doing that harm and get some support. I mean, I personally, if I could create a law in this space and be the police person, that would be it. Is to make sure you have someone of a high integrity that's holding you to it. And if you come to a situation where a potential transgression or transference. For those of you that are working in the space and you don't know what transference is, you have to stop and go learn what transference is now. And here's me projecting, right? I am feeling so strongly about this that I am telling you, this is what I believe you should go do. But in the end, you are sovereign. You can go do whatever you want. That's what this is about. But my projection, my personal experience, my belief, and this is something I do talk to my clients about. I say, like, if you don't even know what this is and you're giving people MDMA and you're starting to have some kind of potentially harmful experiences, do your work. This is a super edgy topic for me to be talking about because I would say most people in this space either want to be policemen or want to turn a blind eye and pretend nothing's happening. I'm trying to really navigate both. Like, yeah, there is this part of me that feels so strongly about like the basic training of holding spaces and understanding what's going on in these spaces that if you don't even have that, by the way, this basic training, I don't know, I haven't done some of the big training programs. I've done an underground training program, but to me, these basic trainings should all include these pretty basic concepts, right? So if you don't even know those and you're feeling like you're capable of going and giving someone 5 grams of some kind of mushroom or even an MDMA experience, like, I don't know, I would really at least familiarize yourself with like the basic things that could happen in the space in order to reduce the potential cause of harm and various kinds of transgressions that could happen. And if you even start to sense something in yourself and you don't have support, this is where you need support. Or if something's starting to go wrong, or if you don't know how to handle one of your clients' issues or traumas or something that surfaces, you need to be resourced enough to be able to send them to someone who can help them. This is how I run my coaching business, and I'm a business coach. If something comes up with my clients that I know I'm not capable of handling, or I'm not trained enough to handle, or it's just not my strength, I have an entire list of resources and other people who I can say, look, I'm not really trained to hold you in this complex trauma that just surfaced, but I can really trust so and so to do that. Here's who I recommend. And if you have to terminate the relationship or the work, please do. And just know that there's always more out there. But if you are genuinely not capable or not feeling confident enough, or, again, have your ego in check and not feeling confident enough versus having fake confidence to just say, like, oh, I can handle anything, you have to think about the harm that will be done or could be done. And also think about this is how I try to think about the greater good. Like, keep yourself in check for the greater good of the entire psychedelic movement. Because all we need are more people to cause harm or someone to do like bigger harm. And it just makes it worse for everyone. But this is where it comes down to your ego. So, this is very edgy. I'm sure I'm going to get people calling me out for this episode, but and it's hard. It's like, how do I navigate this even with clients? I have my boundaries. I have clients who, most of my clients, as far as I know, are doing really good work and they know their limits. Like, they're not out there doing really crazy stuff. Like, I don't have clients that are serving ayahuasca, necessarily. So just really, this is something I want to talk about as there's more and more people saying what's right or what's wrong. In the end, who's to know what's right or wrong other than what's right or wrong for you? And also harm reduction. I don't believe in causing harm. I don't believe in abuse. I hope none of you do. And I think this is why each and every one of us just need to be aware of ourselves and be very discerning and really know like what works for you and what doesn't. And like me, I've had a couple experiences where I had to learn the hard way. Thankfully, I haven't had full on abuse in the psychedelic space, but I've definitely had experiences with people that were not good. They were, I would say, like potentially harmful, where I had to learn the hard way. Okay, I'm not going back there. And I'm going to tell some other people, like, this was my personal experience with this person. And it's been very interesting. When I told a few people, well, I had this experience, I didn't find it pleasing. It wasn't abusive, but it was definitely off. Well, that other person said, well, you know what? I loved the experience. Okay, this is where it comes down to psychedelic sovereignty, unless there's genuine abuse. The other thing I just want to name that is kind of controversial is to question everything. So we hear stories being called out on the internet left and right. But then if we don't hear the other side of the story, I mean, it's kind of like, well, are they guilty until proven innocent, or are they innocent until proven guilty? So usually what I try to do is actually hear the other side of the story and then, determine, like, okay, well, they said that and this person's saying that and they're saying this didn't even happen and that did happen. Well, mm, I probably believe that there must have been actually some kind of harm. This is my own conclusion I draw. But if this person is denying it, at least I got to hear both sides of the story. I generally think if someone's going to come forward, call out someone for massive abuse and call out very specifics, you know, not to say it's always the case, but usually it is the case that it might have, that it happened. But there are always two sides of the story. And I don't know. Sometimes we have to at least consider another perspective before, hanging someone and putting them through the guillotine. I also sometimes don't know if I believe in that either. What I would like to see more of in the psychedelic space is like kind of like tribunals. Like, okay, supposedly some of these people that have been called out actually did have mediation and discussions and it went on. But then how come none of us get to hear any of it? But how can we learn from this? Like, what did that person do wrong that either could have been avoided completely or, like maybe just should have been done different? And that's what I want to hear more of. And that's what I have found has been missing all along, at least ever since a few years ago when this one person who I had interviewed got called out. It's like, well, okay, so we heard the person that accused them of causing harm, but like, what could have gone better that maybe like did this? And also, maybe the person that was harmed, like, did they actually have any positive experience too? So there's always that to hear, like both sides. Like, what if there was 80% positive experience and 20% harm? Is that okay? Well, what if it's 95 and 5? Or what if it's 50-50? And this is where it's such a nuanced area for all of us to just stop and take a deep breath and also start to have discussions about this. This is why I've been interviewing certain people. I mean, this has come up numerous times about how do we navigate these spaces in order to reduce harm or make harm, nil. And I think this is the work that all of us in the space need to be doing, which is our own work. And I'm usually always pretty shocked when I meet a facilitator or someone working in the psychedelic space who literally has no therapist, no coach, is in no program, and really hasn't done much more than maybe done a lot of, psychedelics. There was someone recently who didn't even know what the word somatic meant. And I'm really trying to not judge, but I was utterly shocked that someone's regularly giving someone mushrooms in a medicine container or, a healing container and doesn't even know what the word somatic means, which, okay, maybe they don't bring in any kind of somatic modalities at all, but we cannot leave the body or energy, by the way, or, there's a lot. We cannot leave these conversations out of this experience. Soul, spirit, mind, body, everything. It's all encompassing. But that's a whole other podcast episode. I am on a full on rant here. I don't even know if any of it made sense. I should probably go back and edit it, but I probably won't. But I just wanted to give my viewpoint as we enter into the even more wild times that we're going to be in very soon. to really, hopefully anybody who's listening can stop to like, feel into this understanding of like, well, you know what? Yeah, it's very nuanced. But how can I be of full integrity in this space? And I think if every one of us just did that and constantly had others around us supporting us, reflecting back at us like, "Oh, you're right. I am out of integrity." Then maybe we would have less of these issues in the first place. So that is my prayer for this world, for the healing space, for the psychedelic Wild West that we're in right now. And if you do not have support, especially if you're, a guide facilitator and you want really good experienced people that are also supervisors, I have some names of people that I've worked with that I know very personally that are amazing at this, who've been on this path a very long time. It is not costly either. Get yourself a supervisor. And I am happy to help you. And I hope this was supportive in any way. I would love to hear your feedback, even if it's negative. Lots of love. Thank you for being here. And thank you for doing your sacred work in the world. You are the medicine we need for these times.